Well, like every speaker, thank you very much for having me. I actually thought it was a bit of a prank phone call when I was getting a call from Aussie, and there was a French lady on the end of the phone call. And currently there's an American number that keeps coming up on my phone, so I'm quite scared to answer it. From my point of view, I actually questioned why they asked me to come, because we're not an advocacy group at all. Young Farmers is apolitical. We try and stay away from that. In New Zealand, we have New Zealand Federated Farmers who play that role, and they do a great job at it. So what I plan to do, get the buttons right, the overview of today's presentation is a bit of a history on New Zealand Young Farmers, because probably not talking to anyone that really knows about it. The Young Farmers membership structure, Young Farmers as it is today, an organisation matrix which will give you an overview of what we do in the sector, membership disconnect, and hopefully some potential solutions that we're looking at to continue our membership growth. So 8 years ago, Young Farmers membership was 450 members. We had a dominant ANZ Young Farmers contest, which was actually called the National Bank Young Farmers Contest, which has just changed over last year with rebranding. That had 350 members competing every year, and through that you actually became a Young Farmers member. So that's how I joined Young Farmers. It was the contest, and it was the lure of a $4,000 scholarship to go to Lincoln that I entered, and then through that met some people in the actual club scene. We had an annual budget of $40,000, which is quite scary. That was contributed through membership, plus Federated Farmers gave us probably 4 or 5 hours administration support a month. Because we weren't a big organisation, we were probably actually a hindrance to them at the time. The organisation was run by volunteers, and today it still is largely run by volunteers. We had Richard Fitzgerald, who's just left us. He was with us for 12 years, CEO for the last 4. Himself and a lady called Tinky, they pretty much ran the contest plus Young Farmers by themselves. Weren't paid because the $40,000, if you divide it by 2, their time is really not being rewarded. Obviously, I've said administration support by Federated Farmers. And Young Farmers still was split in 7 regions. Back at the start of the contest, back 69 years ago, there was a South Island versus North Island. That's now changed. And the Young Farmers age is 16 to 31, and that also relates to the contest. So you can compete from 16 years and 31 years is apparently when you fall off the cliff, as one speech in the Young Farmers contest was last year. And membership value is $70, and that's a contentious subject. Some members think it's too expensive. So just a brief, this is the membership structure. So we have 7 regions. Northern, which is where I come from in Auckland, and that's the reason I got the scholarship, because no one from Northern goes to Canterbury to go to Lincoln. So yeah, it was quite good. So Waiwap Bay of Plenty, which is pretty much split. If you've been to Auckland, if you go over the Bombay Hills, that's when the change is. And then we've got Taranaki, Manawatu, East Coast, Tasman, which is where I competed in the 2011 Grand Final for that region. I'm currently now in Arangi, which is the Rakai River to pretty much the Waitaki River, and Otago Southland. So there's a couple of regions that, it's quite hard to manage because of the scale. If you look at Tasman, it takes the whole of the west coast, plus all the way up to Picton and Blenheim. It stops at Rakai, and when I was chairman of that region, I sat right at the edge of it, so logistically wise, it's not easy. So Young Farmers today, currently in excess of 2,000 members, approximately across 20 clubs, and that's just the Young Farmers age bracket. We've had, from the 450 members to today, we've had 25% increase in membership compounding every year, which is incredible, but also comes with a lot of growing pains, member disconnect. The Young Farmer and ANZ Farmer Contest is now under one organisational structure and board. Back 8 years ago, it was run under 2 boards, which was not fantastic. There's a bit of conflict, so we've joined the 2 boards up together, and now the Young Farmer Contest has a board representative, which is 9 times out of 10 is a past Young Farmers member. We now have an annual budget of $2.1 million. Potentially by the end of the financial year next year in October, we could have a budget of $3.5 million, just depending on some beef and lamb PGP funding. 6% of our funding comes from membership, and it's still sitting at $70. When GST changed in New Zealand, we lost some membership funding because no one wanted to increase the membership by $2.50. And that's a hard one for members to get around, that they see we now employ 16.5 staff units, that the $70 only contributes 6%, so 94% comes from industry partners, which is under the PGP funding, or commercial sponsorship, was like the Ravensdowns, the ANZs, Lincoln, Honda, and all that sort of things, Vodafone. So the PGP funding is a dollar for dollar match with industry good partners and the government. The beef and lamb one, which is currently being organised with 10 different organisations, is 64 million, which is quite big, which they had to have a special vote for within beef and lamb to release $32 million of reserves. Because if you understand, probably the same as you guys, the sheep and beef sector in New Zealand is struggling, so they really need to put some money forward for that, and we are part of that process in delivering some projects. So as I mentioned, 16.5 staff units. The half one is the financial, she is a person. We are now being approached to deliver projects. One thing I didn't say before, we were going cap in hand with $40,000 to try and get some funding. We are now being approached to deliver projects, and they come to the board to whether it's see it is core business. And a lot of the times it is, because we can deliver them to a standard that within New Zealand Ag is quite acceptable. We generate 30 times our membership value, so every dollar of that $70 we can generate 30 times that in industry funding, which is incredible compared to what we were 8 years ago. And there's a huge focus on the primary and secondary school age, and this is where I can see the advocacy side coming in. As we know in the media in New Zealand, it's the same as here, only the bad news stories for farming come into it. When we had the botulism scare with Fonterra, I turned the news off for a week, because for the first half an hour it was just depressing as a Fonterra shareholder. The only good thing was the share price dropped and we've got to buy some more shares. So it's really about educating, for us at the moment, primary school and secondary school age kids, that agriculture is the future in New Zealand. It's not classified as a dumb subject at school. For an example, when I left King's College, which is a private school in Auckland, I went to the careers advisor and asked her for some pamphlets on Lincoln. She dusted the cobwebs off, and they were 4 years out of date. So that just shows the relevance in a pretty, well established and recognised school that agriculture was not important to King's, which now I have pleasure of going back and talking to students that there is a huge future for especially smart kids to be in, not just farming itself, but the farming sector, where there's banking, science, accountancy, commerce. So this is the organisational matrix. Where do we start? So obviously young farmers is 16 to 31 year olds, and this is what we provide to them. We only, out of that 16 staff, only have 2 staff members looking after that young farmers age group. So the funding just covers probably their salary, and the ANZ contest fits under that. We're really about developing leadership, putting you out of your comfort zone. So this is where the section under here, like the Generate Leadership course, for the $70, it's valued at about $600, and if you're a Young Farmers member, that's industry funded, so that's for free. So your $70 is pretty cheap leadership course. It's all about self-learning too, because when you become a club chairperson or a regional chairperson, you're doing it yourself. There's no really formal training on it. It's probably carried down from the previous person. But this is where I really see the future for us. We started the Agri-Kids and Teen Ag really as a succession program. We could see that Young Farmers membership was growing, but to keep it growing, we needed the young kids coming through school to have young farmers as part of their life and never want to lose it. So there were the Agri-Kids, which is funded currently by the Sustainable Farming Fund. So that really it's about them, it's a network. They don't really have a club thing, but in the ANZ Young Farmers Contest we have this thing called the Agri Sports at the end of it, in the grand final and the regionals, where it's a race-off. And if you've all got kids, you understand that they love competition, and the best way to get kids involved in agriculture is to run a competition. So we run 7 of those a year across the country. We have oversubscribed to it. We don't have the funding now to actually fulfil the need that we have for for schools to show up. Last year, one of the regionals, they had 21 teams, and if you can try and organise 21 teams with 4 kids per team, it's a nightmare. But that's the success we're having, and it's all about promoting fun, cool agricultural activities for those kids. And that's also, we did this year at the grand final in Auckland, a Food for You, which is promoting, especially in Auckland, where a lot of kids don't realise milk comes from cows, it comes from a carton at the supermarket. Promoting agriculture in a positive way. We had 13 guest speakers come in. They had 3 minutes each to put agriculture across in a positive way. I was one of them that spoke, and as a farmer, and I put hands up and said, who likes maths? No one put their hands up. Who likes money? The whole room put their hands up, and I said, well, if you like money and you like maths, you should be a farmer, especially in New Zealand at the moment in the dairy sector. But it's just about engaging them and putting a positive image across. So the top section in the blue is all funded by industry partners. We shifted into 3 years ago a Get Ahead program, which if you want to look at the website, it's really interesting to see what we do. It's about experience day, so it's taking a classroom out of school or kids that are interested in agriculture. We don't necessarily want the farmers to come along, farmers' kids, because they already are hooked on it. We're looking at the bright sparks of New Zealand ag in the future to come along, experience what farming is from pasture to plate. You don't have to be a farmer to be it, so you can be a bank manager, a fertiliser rep, a vet, a tractor salesman, a tractor mechanic. It's all those sectors that are involved in farming. So the Get Ahead program, I think we hit 1,300 students this year across 10 events. That's 130 event. One of the events at 170, which was probably unmanageable. So we're just trying to split them out now to hit the areas that we're not currently hitting. So Young Farmers delivers those projects. It's not a Young Farmers initiative. They're funded by, Get Ahead is funded by Dairy NZ and Beef and Lamb substantially, and then we have commercial sponsors that come in, like Class, which is run out of the Harvest Centre, and Frontier also provide some funding towards that. And then the early workforce is young farmers, but post young farmers and the late young farmers, the 26-year-olds, they need some more substantial initiatives and things that are going to make them fizz. So we're looking currently at the Rural Mentor and the Rural Business Network, which is in the far corner, and that's about bringing in Fonterra directors, beef and lamb directors, senior execs in companies, and what motivates them and how we're going to, in the future, motivate the young youth of New Zealand. So that's pretty exciting, pretty complex from what it would have been 8 years ago. It just would have been New Zealand Young Farmers and the ANZ contest. And actually none of this stuff out the side because it wasn't funded. Probably the membership disconnect that I can see for a group like ourselves and in any advocacy group, members don't see the value in paying $70. I belong to Federated Farmers too, and I pay $500. That's mainly for my company pays that. For other activities that Federated Farmers give to us, I don't go to any Federated Farmers meetings. Hopefully there's no one in the room from Feds, but it's a bit of an old boys club, and I think that's what they're realising too, and it's going to have to change because there's a lot of good people in New Zealand Young Farmers that need to be into Feds as well, but we're just struggling to get them to go across. And it's creating value beyond the $70 fee. I think if you took up the Generate course, you got your money back straight away, but there's other personal development stuff that we need to be looking at. And a major one we've got here at the moment is the disconnect between head office and the club level. You have huge loyalty within your clubs that they belong to, say, the Rangatahi Young Farmers Club, and not necessarily the New Zealand Young Farmers as an association. So they've got their loyalty with their club because they do community events with their club, they do fundraisers with their club, not necessarily for young farmers, but the fee they pay goes to New Zealand Young Farmers for their admin support and the other things. So especially with organisational growth, we've had some huge growing pains. Membership really should be about 2,500. We've sort of had a peak. We haven't declined, but it just hasn't been growing the way we'd like it to. And see that 94% of the funding isn't directly related back to the core members, but it is related to the succession of young farmers in the future. So that's just something that we need to get across. And that's actively promoting agriculture in schools, which I think we do without necessarily being an advocacy group, which is actually quite good. Potential solutions. It's not easy. Every organisation is different, and I think for us, we can't go off any other model in New Zealand because there hasn't been the growth that that other organisations have had. And for a board, it has to be in the organisation's strategy to make sure that members feel valued, they want to be a member, they want to easily pay their $70 or more if we increase it. But it's also hard because it has to come from a national level, which is the board, through 7 regional chairs we have in the organisation, and then down to 90 club chairs. And they have to tell the same message. It's like the Chinese whispers, when it gets to 90 club chairs, it doesn't necessarily get across in the same fashion. So as a board, we play there's 4 of us that are elected from the membership base. We play quite a crucial role in going around the clubs and making sure that the story is told the same way. As I said, club cultures play a vital role. 90 chairmen need to be selling the same story. the membership needs to feel valued for us. If they don't feel that they're getting more than their $70 worth, they're not going to join. We are a social club, and I just take it back that that $70 is only 7 jugs for the week. It used to be quite a few more when I first went to Lincoln. They were only $5. So it's just the the value proposition for members is quite critical, and I think it goes across any group, like you said before, David, that they've got to feel that when they pay their membership, they're actually getting something from it. And the ultimate question is, for them, what is in it for them if they're joining? And we have this question every regional event that we have. I pay my $70, but what do I get out of it? So to me, it's creating nearly a one-pager that you can give to a new member that has everything they can get out of the organisation, and then at the bottom is you pay $70 for that. And if you can give them a whole page of information, that $70 is just going to pop out of the wallet pretty quickly. But it's also a cultural thing within a club that you pay the $70 as a member. As an organisation, we sort of the image of rural New Zealand has to be at forefront. So anything that we do that is publicised has to be the best image of New Zealand agriculture, because any media attention is good attention, but sometimes it's not. And with an organisation like ourselves, which is hugely run by volunteers, one volunteer can disrupt the apple cart very badly with a bad promotional event. And we do run some pretty big events for little communities, so that's the main thing. And it's never as bad as it seems. And that was my stuff up last weekend. And we had a pretty bad wind event in Canterbury last month, and there's 120 of those that are written off, and I'm number 121, so I'm on the last of the list, and summer's around the corner. So thank you very much for having me.